Next week, I believe it's going to be, excuse me, not next week, but in about 2 weeks, we'll do a short story test where we do two at a time. So we break them up into a pair. So we're working on LambtoSlaughter. The next story that we're going to start to go over will be next week, and then those two are going to get kind of tested together. So having that active reading ready to go is also going to help you with being able to prepare and take care of business with that. Gee, have you got your vocab? I'll take that from you. And I also did a quick little check for the active reading. After you give us a good answer for number one, you knew that was going to happen. Okay, so first part, since we got a little bit of two part, how does Mary feel about her husband and kind of why? Number one, you said she loves him. Okay, so assuming this starts to work at some point.
Yeah, it's working.
There we go. For now. So she deeply loves him, and then Tyler, you said because of the way she talks to him?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Like in the story, she mentions that she likes the way he talks.
Okay, so she likes the way that he talks. She likes the way that he even kind of like sits in the chair when he comes home from work. Likes the way that he doesn't complain about things that are necessarily bothering him. So if we're going to kind of sum up all those, almost kind of said the word that I was thinking of, if you're going to sum up those aspects, she basically loves the what about him. Because it's one thing to go, I like the way that, person looks. Or I like the fact that, I have fun if I'm hanging out with a certain person. But she loves, what about this man?
Everything.
Everything. So that's going to be the big things, or the obvious things, as well as little things. Seems like minor traits, things of that nature. So she deeply loves him because we, as the reader, can tell that she loves.
She's like attracted. I wrote that. You know what I mean? Like she's like just attractive.
Well, and here's and certainly, yeah. I mean, whether you're saying she deeply like you had, she deeply loves him.
Yeah.
The thing, and this is where like that little not essay, but the writing assignment that we're going to work on next week. There's nothing wrong with kind of going with attracted, but what is it that you mean by attracted, and kind of filling in those aspects. So well, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, like I wrote like the reason why I wrote that she was like obviously I wrote she was in love with a man and was attracted to him because like she said like she loved him for how he sat loosely in the chair, and that goes upon like appearance on it. It goes upon like just like a simple action that he's just sitting there.
Yes.
And her like visually seeing that.
So the fact that you would have that detail about the way that he sits in the chair is what we would be looking for.
Yeah.
As opposed to if it was she loves him because she's attracted to him. In some ways, that would kind of make it sound like she loves him because she loves him.
Yeah.
Or she's attracted to him because he's attractive. But the fact that you have a little detail with it, that would be the thing.
I said Mary loves her husband
Oh,
and
he
he
can
doesn't love that.
Well, you're correct. At this point, we don't quite know that yet.
Yeah.
Only because we're taking a look at what's happening on page 380 in that first column. So it's that initial part. But yes, you're absolutely right. As we get into here, and we're going to actually talk about it with that next one, how can you tell that something's not quite right there?
She doesn't say anything about his personality. Just like what you said, like just one how he acts. Not can't tell us anything about his interests.
You're right. The only thing that would like maybe kind of start to be there with the personality would be on page 380 in that big paragraph. She goes, she loved the intent, far look in his eyes when they rested on her, the funny shape of the mouth, and especially the way he remained silent about his tiredness. I'd say that might be the only thing about his personality, but you're right, getting a whole lot of honesty, trustworthiness, which we know is not the case because of the detail that you were just about to say, and those kind of
I have a
details.
question.
Yep.
Who is that?
Who's what?
Shakespeare.
Right there.
Yeah,
Nice
Shakespeare.
In high school. In
College.
Oh.
That's you, though?
What'd you play for college?
Is that
Like
you?
sport, you mean, or like
What college did you go to?
Slippery Rock? The Rock.
Is that you?
Oh, no, there's
Oh, can I answer number 2?
No,
No.
Like,
Did he give you the lollipop?
maybe that's
Okay.
a song.
So like the creamy flavor kind, like
Yes.
that's a
It's
nice one.
strawberry cheesecake.
All right. So how can you tell something's disturbing Patrick?
He walked into the house with his coat and shoes still on, and he drinks. That's what I said.
Well, I'd say with the first part, that's probably going to be an everyday kind of thing. Now, what is it about? Boy, all these hands are popping up. It's like you're showing off.
It's
What
Friday.
What is it about the way that he drinks?
He gulps it down first, and then he comes back.
Now all the hands go down.
And then he comes back with another one darker.
Okay. Now I'm not going to write this all in sentence form because we got a lot of stuff that we're going to take a look at. I'm still going to get to some hands here. So, but first one, how can you tell something is disturbing him? Alcoholic drink,
Is he alcoholic?
in the sense that he, drinks it quickly and goes back for another one.
Is he an alcoholic?
No, it's
We don't have, Max, to your question.
No, he's
We
not.
don't have enough details to come to any kind of conclusion with it. To say because he has that second drink, therefore he's an alcoholic, I think we're jumping to a conclusion, especially knowing what's going to be happening next. Ethan, another detail?
Because it's literally told to us that his behavior was irregular.
In
Story.
so the fact that with him having like the other beverage and all those kinds of things, where it's not his
But
normal
it
today.
said too before one of the actions, he did something very irregular.
Right. And that's the one where he drinks it down really quick. And every time that he does take a drink, even when he goes back to get another one, the second one, you still hear the ice cubes clinging against the side of the cup. So there's a chance that that one's still getting, drank at a pretty quick pace at that point.
As well,
And Leo, come to you next.
how he talks to her, how he's very snippy, and then when he starts to
Snippy.
tell her about, leaving her, his head's down, he doesn't look at her.
So let's go with the first part with him being snippy. What do we mean by snippy?
Like, sit down, don't make dinner.
Okay. So snippy or like short, quick responses. Hannah could have said I was snippy with her at the beginning of class. What are we doing today? A lot of stuff. Snippy. As opposed to,
That's
well,
rude.
I'm going to walk around and look at your homework. We're going to discuss in detail active reading assignments. I just said a lot of stuff. Quick, to the point, terse, snippy kind of response. What are you going to have?
Dinner. He refused to dinner.
Okay, so with those responses, is refusing dinner, does not want food.
I can't wait for Thanksgiving.
He's like, I'm going to stay.
Dinner is not an option.
I'm
If the male is turning down food, you know there's a problem.
I got a good one.
And then, okay.
For the next-
All right, and then there was one other detail that, G, I think you were starting to say, and I cut you off when I went back to Snippy. What does he fail to do?
He won't look at her, his head's down.
No, I
So there's no eye contact.
There's like no emotional feeling between them.
Or his side, maybe.
yeah.
Well, which, I mean, at this point, you can, I don't want to make it sound like, therefore obviously this is why her husband Patrick's going to leave her, because, there's an emotional disconnect. But the way that he presents himself, yeah, there's absolutely
She's
no
not
connect
interested.
whatsoever.
She's not interested
Chant,
He's
and
interested in another woman.
and what leads up to it, we're not going to have any kind of clue. Is she interested in him?
Yes.
I mean, leading up to this, yeah,
But not at
clearly.
the end of the story.
Well,
in.
things kind of change a little bit.
Yes, because
So I have a good one for number 3.
Yep.
So I said you can tell that their relationship is kind of like deteriorating, and she's like, you can tell that she's trying to hold on, like when something's about to end, okay, and you're trying to hold on to every single solitary bit of that good situation that you're in, and she kind of comes off as being like very, very desperate. I feel like she's desperate to know that she knows her husband's gonna say something like, okay, well, I feel like we shouldn't be together anymore, but she's trying so hard to, like, you know what I'm saying, like, try and, like, comfort
Well,
herself.
and I know you didn't say this, exactly, but I think this is kind of a way of putting it, where I put
Yeah.
quote unquote the good wife.
Yes.
One thing to keep in mind is that this is 1950s. So
Yeah.
this is, the,
Wife stays in
and
the
even
picture.
though it's not taking place in the United States, it's in Great Britain, it would be the idea that the husband's gonna go to work, husband/father,
Yeah.
wife is gonna stay home, things will be prepared when he gets home,
Yes.
so here's the plate of cheese if you would like, the drinks are ready for you, I
See,
can get the
and
lamb for
she's being
the
very
dinner.
pushy about it because she's trying to still find, she's trying to help him find a way to still stay with her.
I would say that when he starts to tell the story, not the story, but when starts to say, his whole spiel, that she does come off as being kind of fairly surprised by it. So I think she is trying to be quote unquote the good wife, do the right things. I don't think at this point it's because he's necessarily getting further and further away. Now I think after he says the story, not the story, but his, I'm going to leave you. She's certainly, I think, in a state of denial at that point. And is she planning to murder him at that point in time? Absolutely not. But what is she trying to do? She's trying to please him. She's trying to keep him happy. She's trying to do all the things that's expected of her. Let me get your slippers. Let me get you a drink. All of those things. What you certainly could say is, and I think the way that families and marriages and relationships work today, there's not that expectation that one is going to stay at home. That you probably have more of a connection so far as who's doing what, not the I'll do everything I can in order to make your life here passable so that you decide not to leave us. And I'm saying us because of the baby. But I to say that were they ever truly in love, that could be kind of debatable.
Yeah.
And also, why would she assume that their relationship is fairly strong?
So married.
She's married and they're about to have a child. So, 3 months away, you would think that that would be something that might be bringing them closer, and it seems that in actuality that ends up kind of taking them further.
What? Have a child with
All right, number 4. Why is she suddenly frightened? Why is she? I'm gonna go to Zach. Haven't heard from Zach yet.
That's depressed.
married.
Because I don't call on him.
Exactly.
Maybe it's probably whenever Patrick keeps telling her like not to do things and yell at her, just sit back down.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something that he kind of no, sit down. So and even if he's not yelling at her, he's certainly being a little more forceful. Max, member phone down. So he repeatedly tells her to quote unquote sit down, or he tends to respond fairly to things, whether dinner, can I get you something?
Very angry.
At least by saying no negatively about it, where it's not something that he's, responding in a positive manner. So he repeatedly tells her to sit down or responds negatively to her requests.
No, let me answer that.
We'll see how good this answer is.
So I said he is ashamed of what he is doing, but he is only keeping like half of his face and he's always talking to her.
So what's wrong with his face?
He like only has half of it annoying, half of it like shadow.
Which half do we see?
His face, his mouth.
We don't see the bottom part. So like the way the shade is in the light, it's coming down. So we see like top part of his nose and his eyes. What's a little detail about his eye that we know? Tyler, what was that? That was like an elaborate raise my hand.
Appeared emotionless.
Yeah, okay, there's a lack of emotion. That's definitely one. He's got a little twitch by like his left eye. And not again, there's a variety of reasons why you can have a twitch or whatnot, but people will argue that if you're nervous about something, look like it does. If you're nervous about something, you get a little bit of like a muscle spasm that could be taking place. So he's still kind of hiding in the shadows a little bit, keeping face down, as Gio was kind of mentioning before. We got a little bit of an eye twitch that's going on. So there certainly would seem to be there indicators that there is some nervousness taking place. So
He knows she can do that.
hides in the shadows. Eye twitch. And what does he not do right away once he comes in?
Talk to her.
honey, I'm home, and now I'm out the door. I'll talk to you later. That's how he's not sure how this conversation is going to have. Why have those multiple drinks?
Because he's depressed.
He's preparing.
He's trying to probably calm his nerves down a little bit, and hoping that the drinks will end up do that. Whether or not that's the case, whole nother thing. So you can certainly tell that he is feeling nervous by how quickly he's speaking, hiding in the shadows, the eye twitch, the multiple drinks that he has. I think those would all be things that let us know that he's nervous. Whether or not he's ashamed, that could be something that gets debated with it. Austin, just make sure you sign it out. Number 6, what seems to be his greatest concern as he is delivering the news, Keith? Okay, he's worried about his job, which I would say would be a great specific detail. So if he's worried about his job, how could we even kind of step back? He's really worried.
Whether the suddenly left-handed news would, I guess, go smoothly with Mary.
Okay, so like how she's going to take it, like, so far as you'll be cared for and all those things.
I was gonna say he seems more worried that she's cared for, so she doesn't say anything since it wasn't really a popular idea back
Because it could all end up and himself. So really, and I mean everything that you folks were saying was absolutely correct. Okay, don't say it as no, you're wrong. What's his greatest concern? His greatest concern is himself. Now, what was Keith's point? Well, this wouldn't be good for my job. If word gets out, that I left my wife, that could be a problem. If she's unhappy, then that's going to cause more issues for me and whatnot. So he's worried about his job. He's worried about his reputation. He's worried about, essentially, he wants this to be as private, as possible and not turning into a whole public affair. So the main thing is he is worried about himself. Now, in math, you could argue that there's an inequality that's going on there. If he's worried about himself, how many people is he worried about? One. How many people is she
2.
going to be worried about?
3.
Maybe 3, at least 2, because it would be her and her child. So, Patrick is kind of taking a look at 1 is greater than 2, which lets you know from a logic standpoint there's probably something here that's not going to be working out so well. All right, now, irony, because I want to make sure we're good here. What do we mean by situational irony? What do we mean by the situational?
something happened that was the opposite of what you expected.
It's a surprise to the reader. Okay, well, yeah, audience, reader, whichever way. So, why is Mary's violent action therefore then going to be so unexpected?
Well, dog, in depth explains why she loves her husband so much, and then on a whim she just decides to murder him.
So the fact that Mary loves her husband so deeply.
Is this like an extra, or is this a short story?
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
What was the question?
Nothing.
Okay.
He was asking if it's like a short or long story.
This is the whole thing.
Yeah,
This is
but
the whole story.
I just remember the definition of short
So
story.
Mary loves her husband so deeply. I don't know what I put there. Mary loves her husband so deep. The fact that Mary loves her husband so deeply would cause the reader to be surprised that she not only murders her husband,
What makes him
but how does she murder him? And I don't mean with what as a weapon, but what would be an adverb for murders to describe it?
brutally
Brutally, violently, you
murder.
could say barbarically, basically it's a big club. And a leg of lamb, this is not a pork chop.
And it was frozen
This,
too, right?
it is frozen. I mean, you're taking a look at essentially what would equate to a 2.5 to 3 foot steel club with it being frozen. So this coming down on a
A gyro.
person's head is absolutely going to cause some serious damage, as it does in this case. So whether it be violently, brutally, whatever the case may be, it's not just the fact that she murders him, but it's also the fact that, it's done so in such a violent manner. Does she plan on murdering him when she goes to the freezer to get the lamb?
No, maybe. No.
I don't think so. I mean, because I think she's really, well, okay, I'll just make dinner then. You're trying to hope that this situation isn't really happening. Let's get back to everyday life as much as we can. So let's go, I'll make dinner, get the lamb, he's still standing there, you're holding it, and then all of a sudden,
Smack right in the face.
Not in the face, but I
They never called it.
so after the murder, and I think here is where things really get interesting with Mary, in some ways more interesting than her action. What's her plan now? After the attack. What is the plan? Just give me the plan, don't give me motivation.
Lie to the police.
Not yet.
to get away.
She was smart with how she did it.
No? Okay. So she goes to the grocer, to Sam the grocer, to the grocer. What is her motivation? In order to,
She tells him everything,
because why?
so it doesn't look like she murdered him.
Which is, word for it?
Dramatic irony.
Well, kind of. I'm thinking about a legal sense. What is she doing?
Friend being an alibi.
She is creating an alibi. So she goes to the grocer in order to create an alibi. And before she goes to the grocer, she goes upstairs. She's staring in the mirror. Hello, Sam. I would like some peas and potatoes. What is she doing into the mirror? Practicing. Realizing what it is I have to do. Why then, and this will kind of even get kind of further on, but why talk to Sam so much?
To buy time.
Okay.
She's talking to Sam so much because if she was worried to grab the food and came back, it wouldn't have given her enough time to have somebody come and murder her and the floods.
We don't know how big Sam's store is. It's probably fairly small, but a lot of jobs that people kind of start out at is Shop and Save or Giant Eagle, cashier, all that kind of stuff. You need water too?
No, I got it. Sorry.
You're fine.
Are we having lamb for dinner tonight?
Sure.
Oh, that's Mrs. K.
Oh, wow.
I'm confused.
Do you want me to get back to you?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that your life?
Do you know what her first job was?
Shop and save.
Well, it was giant. It was like a store though. So she
Giant
was a
Eagle?
cashier. So how many people do you think you'd see a night like as a cashier?
Oh,
100.
like a 4-hour shift? Yeah.
Okay. So, if the police come, do you remember Katie in a blue hoodie coming by and talking to you? No. But if Katie is talking about, well, we're having dinner, I need peas and potatoes, maybe some kind of dessert, what's Sam going to now do? Or at least a better chance?
Help her.
Remember her so that when the police come, did she come and talk to you? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember. It'll help verify.
That she wasn't there. Oh.
All during the time when, that murder would have been taking place.
I wonder if
You're
this would
gonna give
actually
them-
work.
No, I thought maybe.
What?
No. Oh,
I said, I wonder if this would actually work. Do you think you could get away with killing someone with food?
Well, this is a pretty well-known story at this point that hopefully not. So we already answered now this one for number 9. Why talking so much to giving the grocer so much information? Sam will remember her. Now, with that, it says what's seen on this page. With that conversation with Sam the grocer, where does that dramatic irony now start to come
When
in?
she hit Patrick.
Well, but the conversation with Sam. Yes and no. Because she hit Patrick, what do we know about Patrick?
He's kind of
Dead?
He's not kind of.
He is.
He's deceased.
He's very dead.
What is Sam the grocer suggesting?
He's alive.
Because you should get him some
Cheesecake.
cheesecake.
Oh.
got
So
dessert.
Sam likes cheese. Yeah, he does like cheesecake. Maybe I will take a slice for it. So for us, the audience, because this is more now like Oedipus Rex at this point, where we know what's going on, the characters don't. As the audience, the reader knows that Sam is suggesting dessert for a dead man. Yeah, I think he would like that. That would be, that's a good idea,
I
Sam.
think what she meant was, I think I would like that. Instead she's
I don't know, Sam's having a rough time with dinner, a little bit of indigestion. I don't know if it's going to work, for him quite as much. Now, number 13, Mary Maloney has just murdered her husband and is now carrying out a clever plan to escape punishment. Yet, and this doesn't mean all, but yet most readers find her a sympathetic character. How does she create the sympathy? How does she create sympathy?
She like calls the policeman and stuff to come over, and then she's just sitting there like sobbing, being like, "Can I get a drink, please?" Like,
Which do, and this kind of goes into the next one a little bit. Do you think that when this behavior, when she comes home and she is sobbing, is she actually crying because her husband's dead?
No.
she's crying for her.
Marissa,
Well, I mean, it said that, like, she wasn't asking.
okay. So, and how could that happen? Like, this occurs, you realize that you killed him and all that stuff, but you leave the scene, and then you come back, and, I mean, chances are there's a fair amount of blood. You're seeing your husband in a way that you probably never intended to, yes, or thought that you would. So there certainly could be that shock of, oh my goodness, not even so much look what I've done, but my husband's gone.
I feel like it is kind of believable because whenever he broke the news to her, she was like, I hope this isn't true. So
And it's kind of like replaying that all over again. I hope it's true that what it didn't necessarily happen for me. And so, and I think that's where this kind of goes in with number 11, where some of that sympathy would be coming from. Really, I mean, she doesn't say this. She murders her husband, probably, out of anger and just kind of, quote unquote, losing it at that point. Why would she be so concerned about not going to jail?
Oh,
Because if she goes to jail,
she's pregnant.
then the baby to be is not going to have anyone that's really going to be able to take care of
I mean,
him
that's not
or her.
That's
So, that's certainly something that I think would kind of cause that sympathy. And that's something that also could kind of cause her behavior to be believable. Well, in 12, we just kind of already talked about at this point because I want to make sure we ever go over these things. Dramatic irony. What scene on this page would be an example of dramatic irony? When she's talking to the police, Hayden?
She wants him to eat a leg of lamb?
Well, even before that part.
I don't know.
Because what's the police going to do?
Eat the lamb.
take it
Well, ask her.
after she
What did
killed
you do?
him.
Where did you go?
Ask her
after?
questions. So she's answering questions about, potentially kind of being a suspect. We know that she's the one who's done it. What also is the police really looking for?
The weapon.
And we know where it is, but the police is unaware of it.
And they
They were like,
When Mary is giving her story, and they are writing down details for it, do they seem to suspect her as being the murderer?
not at all.
I would say initially there's a slight chance.
Wait, but
But then by the way that she's saying things, then they kind of start going, no, this couldn't be, it wouldn't happen,
Also,
most
like,
likely not.
before she convinced them to eat the leg of lamb, they were like about ready to leave. So.
Right. And so that's kind of causing suspense because it's a way for them, to her to try to get rid of the weapon.
I would say that they do it initially because whenever she was cheaper between herself,
Mhm.
at the very end is said impossible that she
Right.
just cut off.
But if they were to go impossible that they were at least considering it, was Nick's point at the very beginning.
So wait. That she must be married to the lamb that she killed.
Well,
Dude, it's just a story.
If you think about it, because Mary had a little, so it must be her
Mary
lamb.
had a big last part, dramatic irony, getting rid of the murder weapon.